What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another special live stream edition of the Baumbastic Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ellis. It is a beautiful Wednesday, May the 8th, 2024. I actually have the correct date up here this time. I noticed about halfway through last week or Monday's live stream that it was wrong, and I was like, well, let me go ahead and check that out real quick. Let me fix that up. But it's a beautiful Wednesday afternoon, and the Arkansas Razorbacks don't have any midweek games this week, which we are grateful for. We needed that rest, us, the fan base, the team. Nobody really cares about the midweek games anyway, so who needs them? This team needed some rest, which DVH talked about on Monday, which we talked about on Monday as well on this program. But Arkansas is a big series against Mississippi State this weekend with a lot of implications. It's the final home weekend of the regular season, although we are fully expecting this Arkansas Razorback team to be back here in Fayetteville for the postseason. But huge SEC weekend, a lot of stakes on the line. You've got number 5 versus number 14, I believe is what it is. Two of the top records in the league, as you can see up here behind me. It's going to be a lot of fun. Two passionate fan bases. And Mississippi State's having a really good year, pretty well-rounded. We will get into all of what makes the Bulldogs go, what makes them tick, and kind of talk about some of their pieces and how I think Arkansas matches up with them. We are also going to talk about just this Arkansas team in general, like we tend to do. I really appreciate you guys in the chat. You guys have been crushing it here lately on these live streams, which have made my job a lot easier, have made just the show better, and it's just been a lot more fun to consume this team and watch this team. It feels like we're all in it together. It feels like we've got a nice little community building here, so I appreciate all you guys. So go ahead and get those questions in. We will definitely get to them, but I do want to go ahead and clarify for you guys. I've got a lot of optimism. I woke up with a renewed sense of optimism this morning. I've been thinking a lot about this Arkansas team and just kind of their makeup, their build, and how I think they can do this postseason. And we've all kind of gone back and forth of kind of wondering, is this the team? Is this going to be the team that can do it? Can they hit enough? We know the pitching staff's good, but they sucked last weekend. I know we do this whole cat and mouse game all week or all year, every week, week in and week out. But I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think I've come to a rational conclusion. Well, not conclusion, because it's still playing out in front of us, but I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic today than I maybe did a couple days ago and a few days before that. And also, I want to give a quick shout-out to my guy, Corey Stewart, a.k.a. Stu Hog, who did a video on his YouTube page today. I'm sure some of you have seen that. If you're not following Stu Hog, what are you doing? He posts the video highlight recaps of every game, which is always fun to consume. And he's been doing it for losses here lately, which, obviously, you guys don't want to watch the losses as much, but I appreciate that in terms of just documenting the season. And Stu Hog is really good to go back and watch some of his videos, like in the off season when you're bored and kind of missing baseball. That's when you really need Stu Hog to kind of relive the season, relive some of your favorite moments. But on top of that, he's also been doing some quick little short videos, just kind of breaking down some topics with Arkansas baseball. One could argue he's trying to steal my flow, but who knows? But I kid. We'll probably have Stu Hog on the show at some point. We've been playing tag a little bit, circling each other around, and then he went on another podcast, which frankly I didn't appreciate. But Stu Hog's my guy. I really appreciate him. Stu Hog and I actually need to defend our championship belt, Star Wars trivia at Parker's Sports Grill. We dominated that with my boss John Neighbors and with Stu Hog and his girlfriend, who I will not name, but she is notable. But anyways, Stu Hog did a great video, great little 10-minute segment where he basically just talked about Arkansas's offense and kind of how he views it, brought in some numbers and how they've stacked up here in the last, decade with some of the other national champions, and kind of debunked some of the biggest myths surrounding this team. But my favorite one that he debunked, and I don't want to just, go watch the video for yourself because it's really good, and he did a great job with it, and I'm not just going to steal his content right here, but my favorite thing that he said was he basically talked about how folks always will cite teams that lose in the postseason. They're like, well, the season ended with Arkansas not scoring enough runs to win in 2023. It ended with them not scoring enough runs to win in 2022 and 2021. Just cited all these years. And it's no duh. The team, when you get eliminated, you don't score runs. That's kind of how baseball works. That's kind of how sports works. There's one team that wins the title in whatever league it is that you're thinking of. So, all the other teams got eliminated at some point. And, they lost. That's just kind of how it works. Arkansas it's not like Arkansas had a consistent issue where they're getting stuck in the regional, or they're getting stuck in the supers, or, they can't make it quite past this point in Omaha. Arkansas has been eliminated every possible way you can be eliminated, from the championship series to a regional at home to a regional on the road. Like, Arkansas has been eliminated any possible way. So it's kind of funny that people will be like, oh, you know, the final game of the year they lost, so clearly Nate Thompson sucks. I thought it was funny, but Stu Hogg did a great job, so I wanted to give some shout out to him. And like I said, I woke up this morning with a renewed sense of optimism, and then watching Stu Hogg's video just kind of reinvigorated me even a little bit more. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys and hear what you have to say as we preview this upcoming weekend. And we'll get into some questions first, but I do kind of have some research I want to, I kind of teased it on Twitter that I have some hot research that I want to get into. And so before I get to your questions, I do just want to do that. So let's take a look at a few things. So for instance, a few things I keep hearing are, Arkansas doesn't have an offense that's going to win in the postseason. And like, they don't hit enough to win the national title. They don't hit enough to win. Like, people have seen all these things and they're like, oh, clearly, Arkansas just can't hit well. And I thought Stu Hogg's video did a really good job of kind of breaking down that myth, where if you look at the last 10 national champions, there's been plenty of outliers of teams like Virginia in 2015, Florida in 2017, which we've talked about here on this program, and a few others who just, were pretty average offensively that made it work. So obviously there's a little bit of a precedent for what Arkansas is about to try and do. But also another very key part of this whole thing is Arkansas is struggling right now. And when I say struggling, like, they're coming off a series loss. They've now lost 2 of their last, 3-4 series, 2 of their last 3 road series for sure, which kind of makes you think like, oh man, if we're struggling right now as June is about to roll around, how is this team going to turn it around and get it going? So I just went back and looked at a few recent national champions and recent teams, even in Arkansas's history, which basically point to struggling right now is kind of a good thing. So let's just go back. Okay, so LSU last season was, obviously a really good team. Everyone remembers LSU for being the preseason number 1 team and the team that finished number 1, but they forget there was a little bit of a weird stretch in there, which kind of, is our entire hot theory. So obviously LSU starts number 1. They play a lot of games. They win a lot of games. They're doing really well. Going into the NCAA tournament, though, it wasn't exactly all sunshine and rainbows. They had an embarrassing series loss. I believe it was on the road to Auburn. I can't remember if they lost on the road to Auburn or at home to Auburn, but they lose a series to Auburn, which is a little bit weird. Auburn wasn't that good last year. They lose a series to Mississippi State, who really wasn't good. And this was like mid-May, by the way. This is like right now, where we're at in the season right now. This is what LSU was doing last year. Lose a series to Auburn, lose a series to Mississippi State, who didn't make the tournament, and everybody thought they were going to fire their coach, and now obviously they're good this time this year. But at this point last year, it was definitely like a loss where LSU fans were freaking out. A lot of people were kind of thinking LSU, oh, they've been exposed a little bit. Then they beat a bad Georgia team in a series, a Georgia team that I think had not quite fired their head coach, but were very close to it. And then they went 1-2 in Hoover. That's what LSU was doing this time last year, right before, they went on the run that they went on. Ole Miss, 2022, the national champions. Let me tell you what they did during the month of April. They got swept by Alabama. They had a series loss at South Carolina, a series loss at home against Mississippi State. Then they had a series loss at Arkansas, which you guys may remember. Kendall Diggs had the big walk-off. And at that point in time, it felt like kind of the nail in the coffin for Ole Miss and their chances to make the NCAA tournament. They followed that up by sweeping LSU, sweeping Missouri, which both kind of came out of nowhere. Win 6 straight games, and so they're a little bit different variation of this hot theory. But then they dropped their final regular season series at A&M, which kind of felt like, okay, that might have been their chance. They missed it. Then they lose an elimination game in Hoover, which I've referenced on this program, where their fan bases were like, hey, like they were calling for Mike Bianco's head, and it was this like whole thing. They end up winning the national title. They go on this crazy run. Mississippi State entering the 2021 postseason. Series loss to Vandy. They beat South Carolina 2 out of 3. Then they lose a series at home to Missouri, which I remember at the time because Arkansas was in a situation where they were competing for the SEC regular season title. This is 2021 when Arkansas had Jalen Battles, Brady Slavens, Caden Wallace, all these guys, Kevin Kopps. You remember that guy? They were kind of competing for the SEC regular season title, and they won it because Missouri beat Mississippi State at Starkville in a series, which was kind of crazy. Mississippi State followed that up by beating Alabama in a series, but then they went 0-2 in Hoover with 2 run rules. literally got run ruled in two. They played 2 games in Hoover, lost both of them, got run ruled in both of them. I think everyone has kind of come around to the fact that Hoover doesn't mean anything and the SEC tournament is stupid. But I just thought that was notable that, you think about those are the last 3 national champions since COVID, and none of them felt particularly good about their baseball club at this point in the season, where we are at right now. I did also want to look. Let's see. Hold on. I got to pull this up a little bit. Looked at some of Arkansas's teams, some of Arkansas's best teams that have obviously gone through, made their deepest run. So 2018, which is, like I said, the gold standard for Arkansas baseball, kind of the best team that I can remember Arkansas having. They had a really bad series loss at LSU in the month of May, which shout out to my guy, Matthew Beck. He got the save in that game 3, that pivotal rubber match game 3. Arkansas was trying him out to come back, and then they went to some bum from Alexandria, and he shut him down. That LSU team stunk that year. I think they made the tournament but got eliminated. They didn't host a regional, got eliminated immediately. It just wasn't a classic LSU team. Arkansas did a thing like they did this year a lot where they win game 1 and then lose the next 2. They did that against a bad LSU team in 2018. Arkansas did sweep A&M the following week, so they kind of got back there. But then they did the same thing at Georgia. They win game 1 with Blaine Knight, lose the next 2, and you're kind of like, man, what's going on with this? Arkansas, again, they did not win a road series that year. Going into Hoover, there were plenty of questions about what Arkansas was going to do. Could they win on the road? Could they win away from home? They go 2-2 in Hoover. So they were 2-4 entering the NCAA tournament. 2-4 in their last 6 games going into the NCAA tournament. And then obviously you guys know what happened. Arkansas caught fire at home, get to Omaha, almost win the title, drop fly ball. Rest is history. 2019, Arkansas lost their final series of the year on the road at Texas A&M. Something they might do again this year. They were 2-5 entering the NCAA tournament that year in 2019. That team goes to Omaha and then goes to a barbecue. But another deep run that started with some sketchy vibes right around this time. And then 2022. I mean, I don't need to remind you guys. It was just a couple years ago. Arkansas really kind of choked down the stretch. They were leading the SEC. They were the ultimate hot, cold, hot team, if you ask me, because they started the year pretty. I mean, they had a Round Rock trip that was weird, but Arkansas at one point was number 1 in the country, number 2 in the country that year, leading the SEC. They end up dropping. Let's see, what were the 2 series they dropped? I can't remember what it was, but they dropped a series against Vanderbilt at home, and then they lose a series at Alabama to finish SEC play that year. So it was, again, a similar situation. Arkansas also sucked in Hoover. I think they were 2-6 going into the postseason that year. So it just kind of, there's a little bit of a recurring history here of teams going through a little bit of a weird stretch in the month of May and then playing their best ball down the stretch. I also want to take a quick look at some of the last national champions and how they won those national championships. Because, again, we always hear these same things. This team doesn't hit enough. When you get to the postseason, you're going to have to hit. You're going to have to, score a lot of runs. That's how you win a national title. Not exactly true. I talked about LSU's 2023 national title run, and LSU's offense was much better offense than Arkansas has this year. But in the postseason, they really didn't lean on it that much. I read the scores out. It was a lot of 5-3, a lot of 3-2, stuff like that. So let's go. 2017, Florida in the postseason. They started by winning a 10-6 game. They win 5-1 in 12 innings in game 2 of their regional. They win their regional final 6-1 after losing to Bethune-Cookman. They had to beat them 6-1. So again, you look at those numbers, didn't need a ton of runs to win. I mean, you win extra innings in 12, only allowing 1 run, and then you win 6-1 in the final. They in their super regional, they won the first game 2-1 in 11 innings. Then they lose 8-6, also in extra innings, and then they win the finale 3-0. Then in Omaha, that Florida team that won the national title wins 3-0 against Louisville, wins 5-1 against 3-0 against TCU, 5-1 against Louisville. They lose 9-2 against TCU, then come up the next game and beat them 3-0 again. Then in the title series, they win 4-3, 6-1. That's just one example of a national title team that really didn't have a great offense, didn't have to score a ton to win it. 2019 Vandy, who actually is not a hot, cold, hot candidate because they won the SEC tournament and really were one of the best teams in college baseball start to finish. They're kind of one of the outliers when you think about teams that win the national title. Normally they go through a little bit of a rough stretch there, or they don't peak in early and then they peak in Omaha. This Vandy team was kind of good all year, so there may be a little bit of an exception. But let's look at how they won the national title. In the Super Regional, they win 3-0. That was the game that Kumar Rocker threw the no-hitter, I believe. They win 13-2 in the finale. So obviously they scored 13, but they only had to score 3. Then in Omaha, 3-1, 6-3, 3-2. They lose 4-7, then 4-1, 8-2. Not giving up a ton of runs, are we? Not scoring a ton of runs, really. I mean, a lot of 3, 5, 6 run games. 2021, Mississippi State. This is how they won the College World Series: 2-1, 6-5, 4-3, 13-2, 9-0. Again, it's not like they needed a lot of offense to win it. 2022 Ole Miss didn't give up a run in the Super, shut out Southern Miss. That's how they won their Super Regional. Then 5-1, 13-5 against Arkansas, which is the game that Zach Morris started. Didn't go well. Arkansas kind of punted early in that one. They lose to Arkansas 2-3. Then they beat Arkansas 2-0, and then they win 10-3, 4-2. Again, I'm reading you a lot of, obviously some of these games, these teams are scoring a lot of runs, but they're winning 10-3 or 8-2 and stuff like that, where it's like they really only had to score 3 runs. And I also have read you LSU's 2023 run to Omaha, which didn't feature a ton of slugfest. In conclusion, guys, you don't really, I understand you don't want to be bad offensively, but I think elite pitching, there is a much stronger correlation between elite pitching and teams that win the national title than there is to elite offenses that just rake their way through the College World Series. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure if I dug through the numbers, someone in the comments will be like, well, the 2016 team, they scored a lot of runs in Omaha. That's how they won. I'm sure there's examples, but just historically, if you look at it, the idea that you need an elite offense to get you through the postseason is not necessarily true, especially when you take into account the fact that I'm reading you a lot of scores from Omaha, from the College World Series, some supers and regionals mixed in there. Arkansas's not going to have to play those super and regionals away from home, we assume. If they take care of business this weekend and kind of tread water next weekend, they're probably going to be at home for the first 2 weeks of the postseason, which is a very big benefit. So, if we change the circumstances and Arkansas had to go on the road and beat an elite offense on the road to make it to Omaha, yeah, maybe that would be a little bit different. And I also love when people say, man, I tell you, if this team loses one of their first 2 games in the regional, they're going to have a tough time winning it. No shit, huh? No shit. You think that if they're going to have to win 4 straight games, it's going to be tough? Yeah, it's going to be tough for literally everyone. That's just kind of how this thing works. That's why Arkansas didn't get out of their regional last year, because they lost game 2 with Hagen Smith on the mound. Maybe they do that again. I don't think they will. I think what you're really going to have is Mesa Molina or Brady Tiger going up against a 4 seed, which I'm assuming they will win. And then you're going to have Hagen Smith against whoever your 2 or 3 seed is, whoever comes out of that. You would imagine Arkansas is they're set up nicely to start 2-0 in the postseason. I feel like Arkansas has the ultimate ace of all aces. So it's now I'm not saying this team can't lose their first 2 games of a regional, but they probably shouldn't. And we'll see how it plays out. But I just think it's always funny when people are like, yeah, well, this team's good, but if they have to win 6 straight games, they're probably not going to do it. Yeah, I don't know, maybe not. But I just thought that was funny. But let's get into some comments now, because I love you guys and like to talk to you and want to hear what you have to say. My boy H-Fan starts it off. He says, sweep the dogs. Hell yeah. Actually, I lied. Before we get into the questions, I do have to give a shout out to our newest sponsor, L. Jennings Law. Folks, we're gearing up for another weekend of SEC baseball, so let's talk strategy. Not just on the field, but for your life. Today's program is brought to you by L. Jennings Law, your go-to experts in estate planning, specializing in trust, business planning, and elder law. Whether you're looking to secure your family's future with a solid estate plan, manage your business succession plan, or navigate the complexities of long-term care, L. Jennings Law has you covered. They craft personalized solutions with the same precision and impact as a Hagen Smith fastball, which is a lot of precision and a lot of impact. Call Ledley Jenkins today for a free consultation. L. Jennings Law, a good steward firm. You can also see their phone number here on the screen. Here is 501-501-WILL, which is 9455. I don't think phones these days have the whole numbers or the letters thing. Y'all remember whenever we used to text like that? My first phone I got, we had the text with 2, 4, 6, whatever, all that. But the phone number, 501-501-9455. Call L. Jennings Law, a good steward firm. We appreciate them for all they do for the Baumbastic Podcast and Natty State Sports. You should trust those guys. Okay, now I'm serious. Now let's get into your questions. Hayden Ulmer, my guy, says, let's get the Saturday, Sunday starters back to form and win a lot of 4-2 games all the way to Omaha. Yeah, and he said this, by the way, before I went on this whole rant. So that tells you Hayden knows his ball. He knows that you got to win a lot of 4-2 games if you want to win to Omaha, which I appreciate. So, yeah, I agree with you. Let's see. H-Fan says, I think Molina will be in the pen this week with Wood starting. I do not think Mason Molina will be coming out of the bullpen. I don't think that's going to happen. I could be wrong. You know, obviously DVH just kind of left it open Monday. He did not commit to a starting rotation. We will hear from DVH at 9:45 tomorrow morning for a press conference, which we will, have for you here on Natty State Sports. But I thought that was, I thought that was interesting. I can't wait to hear what he has to say there. But I don't see Mason Molina, who has not come out of the bullpen in over 2 years. I mean, he was a weekend starter all year last year. He's been a weekend starter all year this year. He just hasn't come out of the bullpen in a long time. I don't think they want his first relief outing in a long time to be right now. But, who knows? I mean, he hasn't pitched super well. His command has not been great. And H-Fan followed up with, why is Molina nibbling so much? His stuff is good. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's more or less intentionally nibbling. I think he struggles to throw strikes consistently. I think that was kind of the only knock on him last year at Texas Tech, is he had a decent amount of walks. I remember in the fall when he was pitching at Arkansas, he didn't give up a hit until like 3 or 4 starts into his time at Arkansas in the fall, but he was walking a lot of guys, putting dudes on, and that's obviously never a good recipe. But at the end of the day, it's like guys with good stuff typically walk guys. Like I know it's not something we should just accept and just brush past, but I mean, we said the same stuff about Hagen Smith last year. Oh, he's nibbling. Oh man, he can't be a starter. He doesn't throw enough strikes to be a starter. Yeah, and I mean, like I get the argument and all that, but I think ultimately you want your best pitchers pitching the most amount of innings. But who knows? Who knows what they'll do, and who knows how these guys will react if Mason Molina goes to the bullpen or Brady Tiger goes to the bullpen. I imagine both of those guys will get another chance this weekend to start, get back on track, show that they're the guy, and I don't think they're going to have to like go out there and pitch 6 shutout innings. But I think if Mason Molina is able to get you through 5-6 innings this week, walk less guys, kind of get ahead of some hitters, and be sharper than he's been, I think he'll do enough to keep his job. But who knows? I mean, it is what it is. Jeremy Blackford says, Molina was getting like 10 strikeouts a game his first 3 or 4 starts. Hope he's just been in a slump. Tiger, too. If those guys get right, then I'm not worried about the hitting. Will be fine. Yeah, he definitely was a lot better early in the year. He also was facing non-conference opponents, which helps. But Brady Tiger, what's interesting about Brady Tiger is it's not like he's been pitching poorly a lot lately. Like he had a really bad start against Kentucky, probably his worst of the year, one of the worst outings of his career, which sucks. I mean, you never want that to happen. But it's not like he had been struggling in this starting role or anything. He was coming off of 2 6-inning starts before that, had seemed to kind of get more and more comfortable going deeper into games, and I was really pleased with the way he was pitching. And then he just laid an egg against Kentucky, so I don't know what to make of it. But I saw a lot of people last week kind of being like, "Oh, Tigers," they acted like it's been an issue all year. It really hasn't been. He's had a couple bad starts here and there. Against Auburn, he stunk. Against Kentucky, he stunk. But for the most part, Brady Tiger's been a pretty good starting pitcher. It is what it is. Let's see. And then Jeremy Blackford says, we will need Will McIntyre. Nobody spells Will McIntyre's name right. To get right, we absolutely need him. But yes, for sure. Tanner Harris says, Peyton Stovall is built for the postseason. Not sure about the rest of this lineup. Well, Peyton Stovall is very much built for the postseason, considering that he hit like 400 in 2022 and he's been crushing this year. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think that this lineup definitely has to hit better than it's been hitting. And, I mean, even reading all those numbers of what I just showed you about teams that don't really need to score 8-9 runs a game to get to Omaha, you still need threats. You need guys that are threats. Arkansas has plenty of guys that are threats, but those threats have not been producing as consistently as we had hoped and as they probably should be. I mean, I'm thinking about guys like even a Vahiva Aloy, a Kendall Diggs. Hudson White was really good this past weekend, but he's in this category as well. There's definitely room for improvement there, but I think let's just see how it plays out. I mean, because who knows? I wouldn't have told you that the 2022 lineup was built for the postseason this time in that year, 2 years ago. I was not sitting there being like, oh yeah. I wouldn't have said Peyton Stovall was built for the postseason 2 years ago, because he wasn't playing well at all. He was not even in the lineup every day, and it was kind of a people were really frustrated with him, but then he turned it around. So I'm going to give this team a little bit of a, we'll see how they play down the stretch. I'm hoping this rest here this week helps them. Hopefully we'll see a rejuvenated version of them at home. My guy, Ozzy Maverick, says Gabe Gackle needs to start. Maybe even Gage Wood needs to start. So Gabe Gackle is y'all are going to get to watch Gabe Gackle start plenty of games in his Arkansas career. I think he'll be the Friday night starter next year. I absolutely think he is. Here's my thing, though, and we talked about this a little bit on Monday. No matter who you take, if you're taking a guy that's throwing 2-3 innings in the bullpen, maybe 1-2-3 innings, whatever it is, and you turn them into a starter, not every single time, but just about every single time, they are less effective as a starter, which is why you see a guy like Brady Tiger. You're like, man, he was lights out as a closer as a freshman. How come he's not lights out as a starter right now? It's like, well, starting's a lot harder to do. It's a lot harder to face a lineup 3 times. It's a lot harder to throw 100 pitches and hold your stuff the whole time. And so, look, those are questions that Gabe will get to answer, throughout his career. And I have no issue, watching him. I'm not questioning him. I'm just saying, like, he's going to get to do all that. I don't know if right now is the best time to do it. Especially because what you would also be doing is taking one of the best pieces of your team, which is your freshman closer who's lights out and, is money with the game on the line. You would be taking that away. And maybe you take him and you move him to Saturday and he's a stud starter, but then you also still have to find someone to close, that game. So it's like, I don't know, it just seems like almost counterproductive to move him around like that. Because then you just have to replace him with somebody. And maybe Brady Tiger would move back into a starting role or a closing role and it'd work out perfectly. But I don't know. I just feel like I'm okay with letting Gabe Gackle continue to be very, very good. I also think that having a closer, like closing and starting, closing is a lot more consequential. So if you trust Gabe Gackle more than you trust Mason Molina or Brady Tigert, wouldn't you want Gabe Gackle in when the game is on the line late in the game, I also just love the idea of having a game that's just Hagan, Gabe Gackle, 9 innings of first-rounders, see if you can hit it. And then, who knows? Who knows how it needs. But I kind of like having, one of your best arms ready and waiting in case you need to roll them. And there's no guarantee that you move Tigert or Molina to a bullpen role that they're going to be as effective as, as Gackle is being at the moment. Let's see. Caden, 4177. I've been meaning to ask this for a while, but have y'all thought about setting up a podcast for basketball and baseball players, kind of like the Boss Hogs podcast? I think that would be cool. Yes, we have thought about it a little bit. Given the timing of when we started this whole thing, so we launched Natty State Sports on January 15th, which was smack dab in the middle of basketball season. Baseball season was about to ramp up. It was a lot easier to talk to Josh Braun and say, hey, during spring ball, just come do this or whatever. There were actually, I don't know if I'm even allowed to say this, but F it. I'm just going to do it because I'm a rebel. I'm a bad boy. There were some light discussions with Kendall Diggs about a similar thing. He saw what the Boss Hogs podcast was doing and he was like, hey, that's cool. I'd kind of like to do that. But it's really tough to start doing that in the middle of a season, especially because if he had started it a couple weeks ago, you guys would have been yelling at him like crazy. So maybe I'm glad it didn't work out. But I do think there is definitely room for something like that in the future. So I appreciate that question. And I think we want you guys to hear from these guys as much as possible, which is why I really love whenever they're able to come in studio and talk to us and, share us a little bit about their stories and stuff like that. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would love. So if Kendall Diggs ends up coming back for his senior year, maybe you guys can talk him into, launching something with Natty State Sports. That'd be awesome. My boy L, legend Hall of Famer, says you and Stu had the same takes, 2 ball knowers. Yeah, very much we know ball. Me and Stu Hogg. Let's see. Parker, shout out. Yeah, shout out to Hayden, who I met at Parker's one time. Parker, shout out. Always. And Gene Carlson says, Stu Hogg did a great video. I always appreciate the fact that his highlight videos are usually posted before I even get home from the game. Yeah, he is really good about that. I met Stu Hogg in 2022 in Omaha and was kind of just asking him about the process. He's like Batman a little bit. Like, he's got a way where he can set it up when he leaves the house to, like, even if he's at dinner watching the game or if he's wherever, he can, like, start the recording and do the process. I can't remember if he does it to his Xbox or something, but he does all this weird stuff. But yeah, he's the man. He's always really on top of it. we respect all that he does, man. He really kills it. Also, I see a lot of people like commenting. Did y'all hear my whole spiel about Stu Hogg where I was like giving him his credit? Like I feel like I see people being like, "Oh, Stu Hogg said the same thing." I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at here. But Bohannon wants to know, and a lot of people have been asking about this. Bohannon says, should Stovall move back in the lineup to try and pick up some RBI opportunities? Should they try to manufacture some runs with some small ball? To the last one, no. Firm no on small ball. It's 2024. We play big boy baseball around here. We're and I say we're not like I'm on the team. Arkansas is not the type of program that is about to be playing small ball, nor should they. Small ball sucks, dude. It's absolutely the way to whatever your offensive ceiling is, you cut it in half when you play small ball, when you give opponents outs and stuff like that, which obviously Arkansas is not scoring a ton of runs anyway, so it's not like their ceiling, we argue it's not that high anyway. I think people just have to hit better, frankly. Like, I know that sounds stupid and simplistic, but I don't know if Arkansas needs to make big wholesale changes. What I think they really need to do is those guys like Ben McLaughlin or Kendall Diggs or Vahiva Aloy or whoever just need to make the most of their opportunities when they get them. So Stovall, look, if you want to move Stovall down to 2 or 3 and try to get him some RBI opportunities, I'm all for it. Go for it. The only thing I have is it's same with Gabe Gackle, where then you've got to find a leadoff guy. You already have one of the best leadoff guys in the country. That's the one thing this Arkansas lineup has, is one of the best leadoff guys in the country. A guy who's getting on base, setting the tone, spark plug, all those things. Moving him down to the middle of the lineup doesn't guarantee that the people 1 through 3 are going to get on base, or 1 to 2, whatever it is. Like this, because it's basically all you would be doing is flip-flopping. You know, the guys who are not driving in Stovall would then be tasked with getting on base so that he could drive them in. You know, and maybe it works. Who knows? But I feel like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Peyton Stovall certainly ain't broke. And frankly, I just feel like hitting leadoff is a tough thing to do. So if you find someone that can do it, I kind of like just keeping him there. I just think Vahiva Aloy needs to. I mean, and Vahiva Aloy leads the team in RBI. It's not like he hasn't been driving in guys, but I just feel like those guys in the middle of the order need to pull their weight. And you know, I'm not convinced that moving them up to 1 and 2 in the lineup would necessarily help. But who knows? I mean, I'm not opposed to any of that. Brett Moore says McLaughlin leadoff, Stovall 2-3 hole. Yeah, I'm actually a little. You know, it's funny that you said that. The one guy that I'm kind of surprised hasn't gotten a leadoff opportunity is Ben McLaughlin, because he kind of has that. Like, his approach at the plate is very leadoff guy-y. You know, like it's all, and he's not very fast. He's one of the slowest guys in the lineup, so he's not like your traditional speedster on the base pass or anything. But I feel like his at bats are always 6, 7, 8 pitches. He doesn't strike out a ton. He's pretty good at handling the bat. So if he's ever in a situation where there's, you know, the guys at the bottom of the order getting on, he's pretty good about driving them in, doing whatever he's got to do. I like Ben McLaughlin just in all contexts. I feel like he's super underrated, but he's another guy who has to make the most of his RBI opportunities more a little bit. Yeah, Hayden Ulmer says, I forgot LSU got sent to Corvallis in 2018. What a trip for a regional. Shout out to my boy Matthew Beck, who I was texting with this morning, and I told him I was going to shout him out on the podcast when I was going back and doing some of this research, and remembered that he got that save against LSU or against Arkansas in 2018. LSU played Northwestern State in a elimination game in that regional. Northwestern State, as in Natchitoches, Louisiana. We grew up like 45 minutes from there. And my boy Matt gave up a home run against NSU. And LSU ended up winning that game. But I remember me and my buddies got after him so hard, just because NSU was like, no disrespect. Like, I mean, they didn't offer me coming out of high school, but it was kind of one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I'm going D1. I'm going to NSU. It's like, are you going D1? I mean, are you really? So it's kind of funny that they made the NCAA tournament and then Matt gave up a home run against them. But yeah, that regional, that Oregon State team was nasty, man. But yeah, they send. I love when the NCAA does that, where like they try to do things regional, but they'll send big schools to freaking Timbuktu, because it's like, oh, LSU, they can afford to go to Corvallis, but they can't send TCU somewhere else though. It's kind of crazy. The Mold Gaming says, I get the optimism about this team, but I don't trust Tiger or Molina to only allow 2 to 3 runs. Well, their ERAs are like right at 3, so and they've done it a lot throughout their careers. I don't understand. Like, I understand that both of these guys sucked against Kentucky, But why are we acting like we like Brady Tigert and Mesa Molina are just like some random bums that we haven't seen have a lot of success before? Like, I mean, look, I get it. They have to pitch better than they pitched last week. I'm not disputing that at all. But, like, you've seen Brady Tigert and Mesa Molina work deep into games, hold opponents down, have high strikeout games, like good teams too. Like, what makes you think, other than the fact that they just sucked against Kentucky, like they sucked the last time you saw them, is that the only case of like why you're concerned about them? Let's see. Zach Edwards says, is pitching depth starting to be a concern at all? It seems like we're starting to give up more runs in the Saturday, Sunday games. I don't know, not really. I mean, like, they suck against Kentucky. Like, I think everyone really is like cannot get over that Kentucky series for whatever reason, and it was a rough one. Like, Arkansas did not play well against Kentucky. They left a ton of runners on base, and their two non-Hagen starters stunk. But no, it's not really. I mean, it's just really not. It's the one thing that this team has more than anybody is pitching depth. And we'll talk a little bit about Mississippi State here later. But I just think you guys are kind of kidding yourselves a little bit. Like, I think if you look around the country, go pull up any team's stats page right now, whether it's like Tennessee, A&M, whoever. See if you can find 5 pitchers that are pitching for them right now that you were like, okay, this guy, unequivocally, you can trust this one. It's really hard to find 5 on any team, even top 5 teams. And I would say Arkansas has about 7 right now that I feel pretty confident about. I also conclude Brady Tigert and Mason Molina in that, even though you guys have forgotten that they are good. But I don't know. David says, how long are we as fans going to B-word about this offense? It is what it is at this point. Yeah, I mean, listen, the offense continues to be mediocre, so I guess it's going to just continue until they, stop being mediocre. But that's what I guess was so surprising to me about the Kentucky series is like, it's not like we saw anything from the offense in particular that was like any different than what we've seen all year. In fact, like I thought offensively, it actually was one of their better weekends overall, like in terms of just hitting 1 through 9. Now, obviously, they didn't score a ton of runs in the last 2 games. They kind of left some opportunities on the way, but it was like I didn't see anything big picture that was like, oh, I'm super concerned about that. But who knows? Yep. Ozzy follows up with drop Tigert, add Gackle. Okay. Let's see. Devin Talley says the 18 team also got swept in Starkville. That team scuffled on the road big time. Yeah, did not win a single road series. Got swept by them. That sweep is actually probably what got Mississippi State in the tournament, frankly, because they were right on that fringe, similar to Ole Miss in 2022. Yeah, it was a rough one. And also the 2021 Mississippi State team that I was talking about earlier, they got swept in Starkville by Arkansas. And it turned out to not mean anything, I'm sure in that moment, I know in that moment I was feeling myself, and I was like, man, Arkansas is way better than this Mississippi State team. And I'm sure Mississippi State fans felt pretty similar. They were like, man, we stink. But just kind of the way it works, man. Yeah, and then David, who's a great commenter, says, I think that this break for the team will give them time to reflect and really lock in mentally. I mean, I know it's like, it seems like it's kind of cliche where it's like, oh yeah, rest will help. I saw someone in the Discord was trying to argue, he's like, I don't understand how position players need rest. They just stand around all day. They're just out there walking around in the dugout. Like, they don't move a ton. Like, how do you need rest? And yeah, I mean, I think one, that's spoken like someone who doesn't know, just what it's like to play sports at a high level. Like, it's exhausting playing any sport at a high level, and baseball is certainly not out of that list. But yeah, and it's also just a little bit about mentally, physically, just kind of being locked in. Like, for instance, last week, I've referenced it a few times now, but Arkansas plays 2 midweek games against Missouri State, Tuesday, Wednesday. That Thursday morning at the crack of dawn, they hop on a plane and fly to Kentucky. They have a practice that night inside the stadium. Then you wake up on Friday morning. I don't know what you have, team lunch or whatever. Then you play. You wake up on Saturday. You play. You get a little bit of sleep on Saturday. You wake up Sunday, play. Like, it's a grind, man. In baseball season, when you're playing 50, 60, 65 games, it's absolutely a grind. Not to mention that these are also collegiate athletes, which, we put the student and student athlete around here. which I feel like is really relevant, especially because this week is the final week of classes. That's part of why the team did not practice the last couple days. They needed a little bit of a break, like we're talking about here. Not having classes anymore, I think, will also help in terms of like a mental refresh, which is something that DVH talked about in 2022. Right before that team went with their hot, cold, hot situation and got hot in the postseason, he even talked about it after they got eliminated in Hoover. He was like, this is probably good. We're going to get a full like week to just kind of decompress and do whatever we got to do and lock back in. I'm assuming Arkansas won't throw a lot of their top arms a ton in Hoover. So I think these next couple weeks are going to be big for Arkansas to maybe find some identity with the lineup. But I also think just like mentally and physically refocus. Like DVH said, he told the team, like, hey, as of right now, like we're approaching, like, moving forward, we are now like, this is the finals. Like we got to start playing now. Like, this is how it is going to be. So let's get locked in, ready to do that. As a coach, you can only play that card a few times. You can't play that card in early April and be like, hey, we really got to lock in, guys. And then in early May, be like, hey, we got to lock in again. And then when the postseason comes around, hey, guys, come on, we got to lock in. You can only really play that card a few times. And I feel like DVH, kind of waited the right time to do it. I remember in 2022 also, just kind of tying this all together. Also, I'm sorry that I referenced so many past seasons when talking about this team, but it's kind of the only way that we can mentally make sense of anything. I remember in 2022, that was, I believe, the year that Tennessee was like 25-5 in SEC play, and like was the number one team all year, kind of like Arkansas did in 2021. And Arkansas in 2021 did not lose a single series. Like they didn't really have these hiccups that we've been talking about. But I remember in 2022 at a Swatters Club, in fact, which we went to on Monday, DVH kind of saying, he was like, some teams are playing better than us right now. Some teams are kind of firing on all cylinders. But I remember him saying, like, I kind of like where we're at. I like that we're just steady. We're not going too crazy. Like, we're playing good ball. We're winning. But it's not like we're firing on all cylinders or anything. And Arkansas this season, as much as they've won, they're 40-9, have not really had a stretch where it was like, oh, everything lined up perfectly for them. The pitching was great, the hitting was great, the fielding, like it was just an easy, comfortable weekend. The Missouri weekend to start SEC play is like the only one I could think of, and even that one they didn't hit that well. They hit like 230 or something like that for the series. But I just feel like DVH is very conscious of stuff like that, where he's like, hey, our goal is not to try and peak in mid-April. It's just not. And which is why I think he kind of got a little offended when I asked him about it. But I think he's very cognizant of like wanting this team to kind of pace itself and get going at the right time a little bit. And I think for the most part they've done a really good job of that. And it's not like they've had to sacrifice too many wins. It's not like they've been waiting to peak and they've been losing. Like they lost a series this past weekend. They lost to Alabama, but 40-9 is still 40-9. Shout out to my guy, JT Hazelwood. He said, Zaza got me feeling like the baseball team going to be all right. For those that don't know, that is a Dracula Flow reference. That is a great one. And we appreciate any Dracula Flow references on this program will be highlighted as long as they're age appropriate, as long as we can say them to our advertisers. But yeah, maybe that's what it was, JT. Maybe it was last night. The Zaza got me feeling like this baseball team is going to be all right. But I don't know. Who knows? H-Fan says, if Lovich catches the ball, Brady was good. That actually is another good point where there was, I can't remember if there was one run that had scored, or it might have not even been any runs scored yet, maybe one or two. But in that second or third inning against Kentucky with 2 outs, Brady Tygart induced a fly ball that got misplayed by his left fielder, which led to them ended up scoring 4, 5, 6 runs on him. I wonder how we'd be feeling if he had gotten out of that jam. Who knows? But I think that's, it all kind of goes hand in hand. And it's a good point that it's not necessarily as bad as it is. David says, I get the feeling that there is tension between Thompson and some of the team. Do you think there's any validity to my thoughts? Yes. Next question. The Mold Gaming says, I think Gackle is better built for starting than Tygart. I think that's true, but only because Gabe Gackle is a generational talent, borderline. Like, I do agree. And I think that Gabe Gackle is going to be a tremendous starting pitcher for Arkansas the next 2 years. And yeah, could he do a good job this year? I'm sure he could. I just don't necessarily think we need to find out right now. And I also think that Tigert, I don't think there's a guarantee that Tigert would be better in the bullpen than he is as a starter, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, Tigert had a lot of really good moments as a freshman out of the bullpen before his arm really started to wear down. A lot of Tigert's arm issues in the past have been tied to coming out of the bullpen and, his workload being a little bit different. I think they like being able to control his arm a little bit as a starter. But I don't disagree with what you're saying. I definitely think Gackle is, he mixes speeds. He throws a ton of strikes. He's got like 4 pitches in his arsenal, throws more strikes than Tigert. But I don't think that means that Tigert is not built to be a starter at this level, at least. I still think Brady Tigert is fully capable. We've seen it this year. Even after his start the other day, his numbers on the year are still good. He's still one of the better starters in the SEC. So it's not as dire of an issue as I think it is. And also, if you like Gackle better, which I'm sure you do, I'm sure a lot of these people do, you probably want him on the line with you want him on the mound with the game on the line, which is where he's been and where he's thrived. David says, is this an instance where we should focus on our strengths, pitching, rather than try and fix our weaknesses, offense? I think that, you should never stop trying to fix your weaknesses. And when I say, when we say we, you and I, we can do whatever we want. But I think there's plenty of room for this team to kind of, I think that's part of, I'm going to answer this in my own kind of way. This team's identity is certainly going to be built pitching and defense. That's just what it is. And so I think when you're thinking about this team and what they should do, I think they do kind of need to embrace that. But I think also offensively, that should give this offense a little bit of fuel. One, because I think at this point, everyone is viewing them as the weak link. So I think they should take a little bit of that chip on their shoulder of hey, we need to score some runs, show that we're not, useless here. But I also think that as an offense, when teams are pitching against Arkansas, I think the Arkansas's lineup almost has to carry that confidence of you can't make mistakes because you've got Hagen Smith, Gabe Gackle on the other side. You've got Mason Molina, Brady Tigert, who y'all think sucks but don't. You've got them on the other side. You can't really afford to mess around with us. I think it makes Arkansas more dangerous as an offense. And I also think some of the best teams I can remember, or some of the most fun teams I've watched with Arkansas, it seemed like they kind of, you think back to the 2009 World Series team, the 2012 World Series team, even the 2015 one. It was like a pitching defense-oriented team that kind of scrapped it together at the plate. And I think Arkansas has a more talented version of those teams now. And so I kind of think it just makes your offense gives you a little bit more of that chip on your shoulder because we view them the way that we do. So, but I don't think they should stop trying to fix their offense. I think there's still room for them to stop sucking. L wants to know, who's your favorite Hog baseball player of all time? I would have a hard time not saying Andrew Benintendi. I think I spoke about this on one podcast, but his season and what he did, I was a senior in high school that year. Junior? Was I a junior in high school? I was a junior in high school that year. And I would say that reinvigorated. I've always loved Arkansas baseball, but and I really love those two teams I just referenced, 2009 and 2012. They did a lot in terms of getting me to where I'm at now. In terms of that's when I really fell in love with Arkansas baseball. But that 2015 season was so fun, and it kind of I don't know. It brought my fandom to a different level, honestly. And I was also a junior in high school playing baseball, so it's any Arkansas player that would have been cool that year, I probably would have been a fan of. But I loved Andrew Benintendi. Bought his jersey as soon as he got drafted. He was one of my favorite just athletes ever. But I gotta tell you, man, Hagen Smith might be up there. I've just had a lot of fun. I remember almost writing a story last year, which thank God I don't have to do that anymore. But I remember almost writing a story last year about how Hagen's sophomore year should have been more appreciated. I just felt what he did. Obviously, we've seen what he'd done as a junior. It's not hard to appreciate that. And he was first team All-SEC last year, had great numbers and struck out a ton of guys. So I think that speaks for itself a little bit. But I think Hagen's willingness to just do whatever Arkansas asked him to do. Even as a freshman, he was weekend starter right out the gate, gets moved to the bullpen. How many freshmen that are big time, recruits, big time, arms, big time talents that have been hyped up their whole lives, how many of them would have taken that move to the bullpen as well as Hagen Smith did as a freshman? and would have been there to deliver clutch innings out of the bullpen in that regional in Stillwater, and then, made a spot start in Omaha in an elimination game, beats Ole Miss 3-2. Like, I felt like from the moment he's gotten on campus, he's been super talented and super impactful for this Arkansas baseball team, but he's also just been a gangster, man. Just like ready to take on whatever challenge they throw his way. As a sophomore, he starts the year as the Friday night starter, struggles with command a little bit. They move him to the bullpen because there were so many injuries. They're like, hey, we need a closer. Let's get Hagen Smith in there. And he was the best closer in the country for when he was doing it. Then he moves back to the starting rotation, ends up being first team All-SEC as a starter, just never scared of anyone, never backed down. I mentioned that he got beat by TCU in game 2 of the regional, but then to come back 2 days later in an elimination game, and I think he gave Arkansas like 3-4 innings out of the bullpen, pitched much better the second time he faced them on 0 days rest, basically. The fact that he just continues to do stuff like that, I was like, man, this dude's a legend, man. I think he should be appreciated more by Arkansas fans rather than people being like, he can't be doing the same crap y'all are doing with Brady Tigert and Mason Molina. People were doing this last year with Hagen Smith. I know it's a lot of revisionist history and people don't want to remember it. People absolutely were nitpicking everything Hagen Smith did last year, and it drove me nuts because I'm like, dude, not only is he the best pitcher I've ever seen at Arkansas, but he's also mentality-wise, like you just don't see a guy that talented have the work ethic and the mental fortitude and the, just attitude and mentality that he has. It's just rare to see that combination all together. I was actually telling Curtis and Scotty the other day, one of my favorite Hagen Smith moments is him giving up a home run as a freshman to Kentucky and really didn't like that the guy pimped it against him. And so they hit a ground ball back to him, and he runs the guy all the way up to first base, running stride for stride with him, kind of stared him down a little bit. He's a killer, man. He's an absolute killer, and he is who he is, man. I really love Hagen Smith. I think when it's all said and done, I will remember him as fondly as any Razorback ever. H-Fan follows up with Charlie Boyce. What he did in the 2004 regional was amazing. 250 pitches. Yeah, that stuff, man, you just don't see often. I mean, Kevin Kopps did it pretty similarly in the 2021 regional and in the super regional the next week. But it's just that was unreal, man. And that 2004 regional was one of the first moments I can even remember of Arkansas baseball was that 2004 regional. Let's see. I always do this thing where I scroll through the comments late, and then I'm like, where am I at here? Yeah, Charles Barrett says DVH coach there, referring to NSU, Natty State. Yeah, they've actually had a lot of good coaches for whatever reason come through there. Lane Burroughs, who's now at Louisiana Tech, was also the head coach there. They've had a sneaky like good little program, but it's still like not like you're they've fallen off a good bit in the last 10 to 15 years. But let's see. Addison, who is a longtime friend of the program, says, glad we didn't have a midweek this week to just try and get a few days off for everyone. There were a lot of games played in a short amount of time in the last few weeks. Yeah, and I think also you just had so many guys beat up. I mean, we know about Kendall. We know about some of the arms that have been dealing with some soreness, but I'd imagine a lot of these guys, Vahiva Loy, Peyton Stovall, JSL, like they're playing a lot of ball. I'm sure they're not feeling great. I'm sure their backs are a little loose. I'm sure their hamstrings are a little tight. Just little things that, like, they're not going to complain about it. They're not going to tell us about for the most part. But, I think that this week is definitely going to help for sure. And will it make Arkansas magically good at offense? Probably not. But I do think just whatever the best version of this team is, it's likely to come out here down the stretch. One would assume. Flying Blind says, Andrew, you'd be well within your right to never read or answer a question from Ozzy. Yeah, I know I would, but I mean, why y'all want to silence Ozzy? And look, I scroll through every now and then. Ozzy says some crazy stuff that I just have to skim by. Like, it is what it is. But no, Ozzy's a passionate Hog fan. He might have a bad take every now and then, but no, we ain't trying to. We are not here to silence voices. That's not what we do. And then Preston PK Birdsong always says DVH locking the team out of the development center for a few days should definitely help, in my opinion. Yeah, and I think also a little bit of that like mental, like we've talked about the physical, but I think that just has to, like, that's a nice moment for everyone to just kind of get away from. How often do you hear coaches say that, where it's like, hey, maybe getting off to the side and watching a little bit will help? I think it has to have a little bit of some bit of an impact here. Yeah, Zeke Wilson says pitching gets you through the regional format. So typically teams with more pitching advances so you don't have to face more offensive teams. Yeah, this is 100% true. And, once you get to Omaha, too, another big aspect of this, if you win in Omaha, you get a day off between games. And so it's like a little bit like I'm not saying you can just have your best pitchers available every day. But, I mean, like, we're talking about a guy like Kevin Kopps and Charlie Boyce earlier. Think about if Arkansas had Kevin Kopps in Omaha. He could have thrown like 4 innings every game, legitimately. Like, because there's days in between. You get plenty of rest time if you keep winning. But I think part of that is staying on schedule. Everyone's always like, oh, how's this team going to get through a regional? Well, a regional can be as simple as 3 games or 4 if you lose that third one. But if you win your first 2 games in a regional, you're in a good spot. It's really not hard to not get caught in a regional. Your ace has to win. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Your ace has to win that game too assuming that you do the smart thing and you throw off in game 1 against whoever the hell your 4 seed is, Little Rock or whoever. You should be able to count on Brady Taggart or Mason Molina or Gage Wood or whoever the hell you want, or Will McIntyre. Gabe, I don't care. I think Arkansas should be able to throw off in that game 4, and I don't really care who the 2 seed is in their regional. Do you expect them to beat Hagen Smith in game 2? Maybe they do, and if they do, more power to them. But I think that's the path to Arkansas running into trouble, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, man, we need 4 guys to start a game. What are we going to do? If you continue to win and stay ahead of schedule, it's really not as hard to get through some of these series as people seem to think. Flying Blind says, studying for my last college final before I graduate, I too can't wait to focus on just baseball. Exactly. Flying Blind is a prime example. He'll be a better fan on Monday than he is today. He's not studying, not worried about final. He's able to lock in completely. He's able to just dig in and just be a Razorback baseball fan. That's what you need. Let's see. Gene Carlson says, yes, we are leaving too many people on base, but we are getting a lot of guys on base. That usually translates into clutch hits and big innings. I'm thankful we consistently set the table. What's crazy is obviously I'm not saying, guys, and I don't think Gene is either, that leaving guys on base is a good thing. But it's one of those things where it's like, if Arkansas hits well in the postseason, we're not going to look back and be like, well, they couldn't get the big hit against Kentucky, though. It really doesn't matter moving forward. I know that sounds stupid, because obviously you want to have those reps of coming through with a big hit and driving in runs and not leaving guys out there, on the pond, leaving ducks on the pond. But it's not like it's a thing. Like, I feel like it's a little bit more of an unstable metric. So when people cite, what's Arkansas doing with runners in scoring position? What are they doing with that? It's usually just a small sample size, and it's something that fluctuates a good bit. So it's like there's not really – it's pretty random is what I'm saying here. It's pretty much random in terms of, I think if you're an offense that hits 270 overall, you're probably going to end up around 270 with runners in scoring position. So if you have a weekend where you hit 350 with runners in scoring position, the next weekend you're probably going to be below that. You're probably going to be around 180. It just kind of is a thing that plays out. And so there's not really any correlation to teams that drive in runs that are good with runners in scoring position in the regular season and teams that are good with runners in scoring position in the postseason. It's just a completely different thing. And that's whenever those pitching rotations shorten up a little bit and you're no longer facing the freshman who has 12 innings on the year and stuff like that. Like, a lot of these teams that y'all are seeing score 16, 17 runs a game or whatever, when they get to the postseason, they're going to face better arms and they'll have to figure out ways to score. Feasting on bad pitching is nice. Arkansas doesn't really do that, which I think is part of what's ruined this whole perception, is that if Arkansas would just dominate bad pitching, their numbers for the year would really look pretty solid. But they didn't really dominate James Madison. They didn't really dominate Murray State. They did okay against McNeese. Even their midweeks, they scored 20 in that one midweek. But even a lot of their midweeks, they didn't really hit the way that they probably should have against lesser arms. A lot of these other teams hit way better against bad competition and not as good in the postseason against actual SEC teams. We'll talk about one of them in a little bit, Mississippi State. But yeah, I think there's a long-winded way of just saying, yeah, I agree, Gene Carlson. Yeah, Flying Blind says pitching depth is needed in regionals. Just look at the Stillwater regional scores. So many double-digit run games. Yeah, that regional is a little bit of an outlier, but for the most part, yeah, I'm with you. But again, how clutch was it that Arkansas won that game too against Oklahoma State? That's pretty much what this series came down to. Because in that final game, the regional final, what was the final score? Like 5-3, 4-3, something like that. Arkansas had Hagen Smith still ready to roll. They had Zach Morris ready to go. They had Cole Ramage who pitched in that game. And Oklahoma State just kind of ran out of arms. Trust me on this one, guys. For anyone worried about pitching depth, if you're worried about Arkansas's pitching depth, you would be absolutely peeing your pants if you were a fan of literally any other team in the country, because they just don't have as much. So if it turns into a who has the better bullpen type of thing, I feel like Arkansas is gonna be good there. Let's see. Hayden says we need a radio guy to go unhinged and shit talk the team right before postseason like 2022. That is a good point. That is what happened. There was a radio guy whose name will not be referenced here, but who had a lot of things to say about Michael Turner, and it really pissed off the team and seemed to help. Maybe that's what it'll take. Let's see. Yeah, David says, David had a few good comments there, but he said, we have been spoiled with pitchers. Blaine Knight, Isaiah Campbell, Kevin Kopps, now Hagen. It's been one hell of a run. Yeah, I mean, I feel like having guys like that are just, and what's crazy is the order you just listed them in, they've all, like, Blaine Knight was really good. Isaiah Campbell the next year was even better. Kevin Kopps in 2021 was even better. Now Hagen, maybe even a little bit better. It's like Arkansas just seems to be continuing to find monsters, man, and just tournament. I mean, it's really hard not to be impressed with what Matt Hobbs has done during his tenure at Arkansas. It's been pretty unreal, actually, and we respect Matt Hobbs around these parts. Porkenstein says, don't forget the Brady Toops Grand Slam. I definitely am not forgetting that. Speaking of that 2004 team, yeah, shout out to Brady Toops who released a single. He's an artist, a music artist now, so good for him. But yeah, I will never forget that. I was listening to that sucker on the radio, listening to Chuck Barrett, like I imagine a lot of you were. Legendary moments, man. I mean, I think there's that's one of those things, like if someone got a time machine and went back in time and changed that outcome, I wonder how much of a ripple effect it has for the rest of the program. One, because that team doesn't go to Omaha. The basis of which this kind of program under DVH was built on, changes a little bit. I wonder my fandom, how it would have been affected. Like, I wonder it's just started a huge domino effect that has led to the program being where it's at today and potentially them winning a national title here this season. Which, by the way, if you didn't catch it, the Natty's back on. I talked myself all the way back into it. They're definitely good. Christian Holt, potentially a family member of Peyton, maybe? No? Or Bob? One of those. Says, Woo Pig Suey. We finished in the regular season 45-10, sweeping state, and going 2-1 at A&M. Boy, that would be quite the statement, I'll tell you. I don't hate it, Christian. That would be quite the statement. And I think that would probably mean Arkansas would be the number one overall seed in the tournament, depending on what happened in Hoover potentially. But I think that would probably be enough for Arkansas to be, at worst, number 2 overall seed going into the tournament. Let me ask y'all this. Chat, y'all can just give me y'all's answers if y'all want. Do y'all want Arkansas to be, like, would y'all, if it were a thing where someone just came to you and said, hey, do you want Arkansas to be the number 1 overall seed? Like, yes or no? Would y'all just say no, just like, hey, we don't even want to take the chance with the curse? Or would y'all want to be the team that, like, breaks the curse? Funny moment here in the chat. Mary Ellen, our resident stat nerd, our resident pro hog expert, she said, what have I missed? And Preston said, Andrew just took all of his clothes off and told us baseball is doomed. That is pretty much what happened. But Mary Ellen, scroll to the beginning of this because I dropped some bombs and some love to Stu Hogg, but read a bunch of stats, which I'm sure you will like. Porkenstein says, we seem like a team that wants to work the count and get to the bullpen and cash in on mistakes. Yes, that is absolutely, that is kind of like a, everyone always talks about the Nate Thompson approach and the Nate Thompson philosophy. A lot of people that don't know even anything. They've never spoken to Nate Thompson. They have no idea what he tells these hitters. But I think one thing that has been very consistent with Arkansas during the Nate Thompson era is they're usually pretty good at doing what you're talking about here right now, Porkenstein, of kind of working that count to where even when Arkansas is not scoring runs, most times they're at least either working the count or getting guys on base and, making teams work a little bit. And, this is actually a really good segue here for me. I'm gonna talk about Mississippi State. It took me over an hour of this pod, which I honestly was kind of worried. I was like, this might be a shorter pod, just because, who knows? Nothing really happened since Monday. It's going to end up being at least an hour and a half, which we love. We love that. But let's talk about Mississippi State for a little bit. And I'm going to start with the pitching staff here. So there are 2 weekend starters that we know. The first one is named Khal Stephen, Khal. I'm assuming it's Khal. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone actually say his name. He has a 2.96 ERA and 79 strikeouts in 70 innings pitched. If that 70 number sounds like a lot, it is. He has the most innings pitched in the SEC this season, right above one Hagen Smith. He also only has 18 walks in 70 innings of work. Ton of strikes. Stuff's pretty good, 91, 92, 93, can run up to 94. Likes to throw that fastball at the top of the zone. Slider and curveball, too. He'll mix in both of them. He's one of those dudes who, has good velo, but every now and then he'll just, rip a 95. And you're like, oh, whoa. It's like he's 92, 93, okay, and then boom, 95. And his slider also, it'll be anywhere from 83 to 88. It's unreal. And Hagen kind of does a little bit of that too. A lot of the best pitchers with their sliders will do that. But anyways, Khal Stephen, innings eater, workhorse, and he's had a couple of short starts like Hagen kind of, who had a 1-inning start against James Madison. But he had his first start in SEC play. He got roughed up by LSU. Since then, he's been really consistent, getting them 6-7 innings. Like I said, leads the SEC in innings. So they really count on him to set the tone each weekend. He's going to start game 1 for Arkansas, I would imagine, unless they switch it up and throw off of Hagen Smith, which maybe they do. And their Saturday guy is a guy that I'm sure you guys have heard of, Sagente Jarangelo. I hope I'm saying his first name right. I know it's Jarangelo. This is a guy that pitches with both hands, ambidextrous pitcher. One, he's got the cool 6-fingered glove that he'll mix in. What's crazy about him is from the left side, when he's throwing left-handed, he's 91, 94, good arm, good live arm. From the right side, he runs it up to 97, 98 consistently. I was watching his start against Alabama last week, and he was touching 96, 97 in his 6th, 7th innings of work. Dude's got an absolutely electric arm. DVH was joking the other day. He was like, I think he just needs to throw right-handed. He's way better right-handed, which is kind of funny because Arkansas has a lot of lefties, so he's going to be throwing right-handed a lot to Arkansas. He's got a 3.53 ERA, 88 strikeouts in 66 innings. I believe he's a true sophomore. Last year, he was a weekend starter for them, a bad Mississippi State team, and he kind of took his lumps and walked a ton of dudes and was kind of up and down. He's been a lot more consistent this year. He's also 4th in the SEC in innings pitched. He's thrown 66 innings. Hagen Smith thrown 66.1. So Mississippi State's top 2 starters really work deep into the game, and they kind of count on them too. They have some depth in their bullpen. They have a couple of guys. Tyler Davis is a Pooslangen lefty who is kind of been one of their best relievers for whatever. He's got a 1.33 ERA, 32 strikeouts in 27 innings. Stuff's not even that great. Honestly, Stuff is pretty similar to Stone Hewlett. And they also have a right-handed Stone Hewlett in Tyson Harden, who is their guy that they'll use twice a weekend. He has never thrown more than 40 pitches in an outing this year, but he's got 24 innings pitched on the year, and he throws twice a weekend sometimes, 2.19 ERA. They'll use him a good bit. Those are kind of their top 2 most used bullpen arms. And then they've got a group of guys like Cam Schuelke, Carson Ligon, Nolan Stevens, who I believe transferred from Texas, and a couple other arms that are kind of in that high 3 ERA, low 4, all about the same, all throwing about 23, 24 innings, just solid relievers. Some walk too many guys, some give up too many. They have their strengths and weaknesses, but they just have a group. They have those top 2 guys and then 4 guys who are all kind of in the same range, which honestly is kind of Arkansas's version of having their Cooper Dossett, their Stone Hewlett, their Jake Verity, all these guys that are just kind of, similar values. So Mississippi State's got a little bit of depth in the bullpen, and they got 2 starters that really like to fill it up. Like last weekend, Mississippi State beat Alabama 2 out of 3, and they won the first 2 games of the series. They only used 4 pitchers in the first 2 games. They had their Friday night guy, Steven, I think he went 7 innings. I think it was both of them. Him and Durangelo both went 7 innings, and then they had 1 reliever each in those games go 2 innings. Like, that's a huge weapon. And so if Mississippi State's able to stay on schedule and get a ton of work out of those guys, they're really tough to crack, you know. And so, you know, it's going to be a very big key, especially if they throw one of them against Hagen Smith, of like, can Arkansas break the seal early and kind of mess up that schedule? And maybe Steven only goes 3 1/3. Maybe he only goes 4 1/3. Can Arkansas do something like that? They're usually pretty good at making pitchers work for the most part. But I think that's a big key to this weekend is like, can they get to that bullpen and can they make them use some of those bullpen arms that are pretty average, I think. So let's see. I'm just kind of scrolling through these comments here as I debate on whether or not I should even talk about Mississippi State's offense. But Z-Goose wants to know, Andrew, what do you think the Baumbastic schedule will look like after the season is over? So in terms of schedule, I really don't know. I think it'll kind of depend a little bit, and I say kind of, it'll depend heavily on just what happens. You know, like when there's a big commitment, I imagine I will want to do something. You know, I imagine I'll want to do something. Maybe we'll do it twice a week, but I don't know, dude. The off season is kind of crazy. I might do more streams in the off season than I do now, like frankly, because there's more going on. Whereas like a week like this week, obviously we're doing 2 streams, you know, over an hour and a half each. So we're talking about a good bit, but it's like there's nothing that really happened in Arkansas baseball yesterday or Monday or today or tomorrow other than DVH's press conference. So who knows? I might be going live even more, but I imagine, especially now that we've really broken the seal on this live stream thing, I imagine I'm down to just go live, you know, at least twice a week, I would imagine, during the off season. There's going to be plenty of transfer portal stuff, MLB draft stuff going on, you know, potentially like coaching changes, like weird things, like coaching searches. There's also going to be summer ball, which if you guys have not kept up with my content in the past before Natty State Sports, summer ball is one of my favorite things to watch. I love keeping up with the current Razorbacks when they go play in the Cape Cod League, the Northwoods League, California League, wherever. I really like keeping up with that, and so I will love to, at the very least, throw a few of those things into you know, the podcast a little bit. I'll be keeping you guys updated. I think also we're going to have I'm going to try and shoot for more interviews in the summer. You know, I'm going to hope I can get some of these guys like Kendall Diggs and whoever in, you know, maybe Gack will make his return. Maybe we can make Gackle the first 2-time guest of the Baumbastic Podcast. So I think it's going to be cranking up. I'm definitely not about to just season end and see you guys next February. It definitely ain't going to be like that. Now that this Baumbastic Podcast is cooking, man, we're gonna keep it rolling in the off season, which I imagine is when a lot of you guys are gonna want to hear about some things. So I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to it. Sharkansas says teams that throw strikes tend to keep Arkansas off the board, so I agree. Well, speaking of throwing strikes, this Cal Steven, that's gonna be the big challenge for them is kind of see, hey, what you know, because if Arkansas's not getting walked, which this guy doesn't walk a ton, what do they look like? I think that is a good point. Arkansas is a little bit walk dependent. And yeah, Flying Blind followed up with Kyle is the type of pitcher that can gets Arkansas, low strikeout numbers, soft contact guy, a little bit. But he's a little bit interesting. He's not like you know, Kentucky had like the sinker ball guys. He's really not even like that. He likes to attack with fastballs up in the zone, which, you know, is a little bit like, hey, he'll challenge you a little bit. You know, like his is a little bit more like he throws a ton of strikes, but he's got a little bit of stuff, and I imagine he's gonna want to challenge the guys that get Arkansas out and get really everyone out. The guys who really mix speeds effectively, and you aren't able to tell when they're going to what pitches. You know, like when Arkansas is able to fight off of those breaking balls and kind of get into fastball counts, they're a much better offense, just like anyone is. And, you know, Steven does a really good job of mixing the 3 pitches as he's going through the lineup. And so if they can really, like, eliminate one pitch, I think that's when you see the pitchers get in trouble against Arkansas. If they're not landing that breaking ball, it's really tough because Arkansas is good at taking their walks. And so if you're not able to land one of your top go-to off-speed pitches and Arkansas is able to get you down to basically a 2-pitch mix, They're usually pretty good at least stringing together good at-bats against you. Devin Talley says, it seems like we get screwed when we get top 3 overall seeds, sent TCU to us in 2023 and Nebraska to us in 2021. I want to push back a little bit on the Nebraska thing. So I know that they won the Big Ten that year, and everyone kind of made a big deal about that. Like, oh, man, how are you going to send the Big Ten champions? I don't think that Nebraska team was that good. I really don't. Like, if I'm just being honest with you, they had a couple nice little pieces. They were a scrappy bunch, but they were like RPI like 37 or something like that. Like, they were one of the worst 2 seeds in the tournament that year, frankly. Now Arkansas struggled with them, but it wasn't like Arkansas got a bad draw. Like, that Nebraska team had only played a couple of – like, they had not played a team like Arkansas all year. So I felt like that was actually – like, 2021, I thought they gave them a pretty good draw. Arkansas just didn't play that well that weekend, and they ended up getting out of the regional. But I think NJIT was obviously a gift. That Northeastern team that Arkansas didn't even have to play – I thought they were actually a little bit of a dangerous 3 seed, and it didn't end up being that way. But that Nebraska team that year, I remember they won the Big Ten, but the Big Ten is not like winning the Big Ten is not, it's not the same as like winning the Big 12 or the ACC or something like that. So I didn't think that Nebraska team was like all that, frankly. I thought that was a pretty solid draw. 2023, though, a little bit different. Let's see. Let's do a little bit of let's talk a little bit about just before we get out of here and get your final questions in now, because I'll rapid fire through them as they pop in for sure. But let's just talk a little bit. So Mississippi State's offense, really top heavy, which we say that about a lot of SEC teams of like, if you kind of get through the top 5 or 6, there's a huge drop off. Theirs is pretty drastic. Like, their top 4 hitters are dangerous. I mean, you've got Dakota Jordan, who was into the transfer portal last year for like a week. I don't know if y'all remember that, and then went back to Mississippi State. He's their star. He's their big piece in their lineup. He's hitting 367 with 16 home runs. He's got next level power. He's gonna be a top pick, top 2 or 3 round pick in this summer's draft. Connor Husak, 349, 8 home runs. David Mershon, 339, only 4 home runs. Hunter Hines, who feels like he's been there forever. He's hitting 289 with 14 home runs. They've also got a kid, Amani Larry, who had a good year for them last year and like is kind of like their Kendall Diggs, I would say, in terms of like a guy that they penciled in as like a 300 driving a ton of runs guy. Has not worked out that way this year. He's hitting like 230 with a few home runs, but he's still dangerous. After that, it drops off a little bit, and there's a little bit of a revolving door of might have a few different guys in the lineup there. But that top 5, man, it really is as dangerous as any in the country. But you look at the top 5, and you're like, oh, man, this must be one of the best offenses in the country. Then you look at their overall team stats, and they're about middle of the pack in everything SEC-wise. Their power numbers have also not been great in SEC play. I think they're 9th in the league in home runs, 12th in the league in doubles. They are 10th in they're 9th in slugging, 6th in on base percentage in SEC play, 6th in scoring as well. So they're just kind of like right around that like middle of the pack, but very dangerous. Certainly a better offense than Arkansas, I would say. And they run a little bit, but not a crazy amount. And plus, we just saw Arkansas. We just saw Arkansas face a team that is as good of a base running team as any, and it really wasn't that big of a factor. So, it is what it is. Flying Blind wants to know, by the way, we're talking about Durangelo, the switch pitching Saturday starter for Mississippi State. He says, genuine questions. What are the rules for switch pitching? Can you switch mid-count? What if there's a switch hitter? Who chooses first? So if you can switch mid-count if there's like a change or something like that, but I'm pretty sure you pretty much declare it pre-at-bat. Obviously, if they make a substitution and bring in a different hitter, then yeah, but he's not going to switch mid-count unless there's a substitution of some sort. But the pitcher basically declares it of like kind of, so if it's a switch hitter like Parker Rowland, for example, who you maybe you'll see this weekend, who knows? So basically, he would just say like, "Hey, I'm pitching right-handed." The hitter would just do whatever he wants to do. The switch hitter gets to kind of do whatever. But no, I don't think they can switch it mid-count just like for the hell of it. I could be wrong. I don't know if I've ever seen it. I don't know why that would happen. I think if you see switch hitters, I think you're going to see him throw right-handed. Because like I was saying earlier, and like DVH said, he's a better right-handed pitcher than he is a left-handed pitcher. But he's dangerous from both sides, man. So we'll see. Also, I just realized he's going to be pitching left-handed to Arkansas's lefties, like Ben McLaughlin, like Peyton Stovall. So that's a big factor. I mean, like I said, I think he's better right-handed. He's definitely more electric stuff-wise right-handed, and his numbers are way better right-handed. So when he's left on left against some of those guys, will he be able to shut them down and kind of make it work? Because, I mean, you can kind of see the path to where, like, if he's electric right-handed and he's able to switch left-handed to get those left-on-left matchups and spin a breaking ball, you could see how that would be pretty much a massive issue for a team like Arkansas. Or will it be a situation where it's like, hey, right-handed, we can kind of catch up to it, and then left on left, he's not as good as a left-handed pitcher, so Stovall and McLaughlin and Diggs and all these guys are going to hit him well. Who knows? But it is what it is. Devin Talley says, the number 3 overall seed shouldn't have drawn the best team in the Big 12 last year in TCU. That was insane. I agree, but I will go ahead and point out, TCU did a little bit of the hot, cold, hot thing, which is part of why that happened. TCU, we knew they were good. We saw them in Arlington. We saw them in the regional, and they won the Big 12 tournament, I'm pretty sure, or were at least playing really well down the stretch. But TCU had struggled middle of the year. They went through a really weird lull to the point where it was like kind of in question if they were even going to make the tournament. Then they got hot late and ended up being a 2 seed in Arkansas regional. But TCU kind of duped the committee a little bit because they sucked in the middle of the year, which kind of threw their resume into a flux a little bit to where you got a really overqualified team that on paper looked kind of average, but it is what it is. Zegus also, great comment. He says, still think we were tipping pitches to TCU. I would be utterly stunned if Arkansas were not. If like really, and I have no idea how we would go about getting that answer. I don't think anybody from TCU is going to like say that. I would be stunned if there weren't a little bit of that going on. Seemed like they were barreling up just about everything. And it would, I agree with you. And this kind of stuff happens in college baseball way more than people realize, I think. Way more. Flying Blind also says, the bond between Arkansas and NJIT was so much fun to watch. Yeah, Arkansas also did that with Central Connecticut State that one year. It seems like they really like to like bring in those just take those 4 seeds under their wing a little bit. I don't know what it is, and I think it's just cool for some of these teams that play in front of 12 fans on a regular basis to come to Baum and get to play in an environment like that. I like it. By the way, Christian Holt says, I just want us to be number 2 and not number 1 seed. I believe the curse is legit. Okay. Christian Holt running from the grind. Well, then you're going to be in an issue here, Christian, because you're the one who said that Arkansas is going to go 5-1 down the stretch here, and I really make statements these next couple weekends. If that's the case, Arkansas is going to end up with that 1 seed, man. You better tell them to drop a game this weekend. We'll see. And then Preston says, I think the pitcher has to declare which hand before the at-bat and can't switch it during. Yes, I think this is true. I do think, though, that if there's if for whatever reason, and you don't see too many offensive substitutions, but I do think if there's a substitution, obviously all bets are off. But yeah, I think the pitcher basically just declares it, and then the batter, does whatever he wants to do based off of that. Arkansas, I'm trying to think, though. Arkansas's only switch hitter is Parker Rowland, right? Or at least one that plays, right? I don't know why I don't have this. Yeah, so it's really not going to be much of a thing. Like, I think he's just going to like pitch left-handed to Peyton Stovall, pitch right-handed to Peyton Holt, right-handed to Jared Spraglott, left-handed to Ben McLaughlin. It'll just be pretty left-right for the most part. But yeah. Well, guys, I appreciate you joining me on today's program. It's been really fun. Before I hop off, though, I do want to give you a shout-out. If you really enjoyed being live with Natty State Sport, hang around, because coming up at around 2 o'clock, Curtis and Scotty are going to hop in here for a little live stream of the Pot at the Palace. Be sure to flood their comments with baseball questions. I think that'd be funny. But no, yeah, it's gonna be really fun. We've been live streaming a lot here lately, man. We've been having live streams overlapping. We want you guys to basically just always be hanging out with us. That's what we like to do. So stick around. Check out Pot at the Palace, which is going to be coming up here at about 2 o'clock. It's now 1:43. Appreciate you guys for joining in as always. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and supporting the channel. It really does mean a lot. I'm really happy to see this little community forming. We got a nice little thing going. Let's keep it rolling. Tell your friends, tell your family members, hop in with the Baumbastic Podcast. Especially if you have your, that friend who's like a casual fan who kind of will like, pay attention a little bit, but then he'll really start watching when the postseason rolls around. Go ahead and let him know. Hey man, if you want to get tapped in, hit up that TBP, that Baumbastic Podcast. Let's go tap in. Couple quick questions before I get out of here. Bohannon did want to know what and who has your favorite pitch on the team this year. Example, Tigers curve. Hagen Smith's slider is probably the best pitch I've ever seen. Like, it's freaking unreal, man. I think that's like the singular best pitch. I'm going to take Hagen Smith out of the equation, though, and I'm going to think about this for a little bit. I really like Will McIntyre's little cutter, slider, slurve thing, whatever. I know everybody's not big on that right now. Stone Hewlett's slider is really good. I mean, he's obviously been tearing up lefties with that. I like Fouch's splitter. I mean, that's kind of the answer. When you talk to players on the team, they all say they wish they had that splitter. So maybe that's the answer. Fouch's fastball is also, obviously up over 100. I'll tell you, Jake Farady's cutter is underrated in this conversation, though. Jake Farady's cutter is absolutely gross. It's like 93 miles an hour and has like a foot of horizontal break. It's pretty wild to see on the track, man. But sorry, I just got distracted from my closing speech here. But yeah, guys, I hope I answered all your questions. If I did not, I do want to say I will be back Sunday. I'm planning on going live Sunday night at some point. I don't know when, but just when the series wraps up. Might just do it right afterwards. I might do it from my house. And when I say I might, I'm planning on doing it from my house. I've got all the equipment and everything ready to do it. And so as soon as the series is over, look for an announcement. I'll try to put something out. Maybe it'll be like an hour after the game, maybe 2 hours after the game, but some point Sunday night, especially if it goes well. If Arkansas gets swept by Mississippi State, maybe I'll wait till Monday. But I'm tentatively planning to go live Sunday to kind of recap all the craziness, recap all the action. So I look forward to seeing you guys there. Once again, make sure you're also subscribed on your Apple, Spotify, Megaphone, Amazon podcast, whatever. Make sure you're tapped in with this podcast. If you don't like looking at my face and watching it, you can always listen whenever you're driving to wherever. Make sure you hit that download because that's how we get paid. But again, guys, really appreciate all the support. I hope you have enjoyed it. And it has been another eventful and productive edition of the Baumbastic Podcast.